There's a lot of interesting news going on in the comic book world, which nobody else seems to be covering. But that's why you're here. So thank you, everybody who subscribes. I really appreciate you guys, and we'll try to bring you the best comic-related content out there on the internet. If you're new, my name is John Delarose. I'm a #1 best-selling author, award-winning comic creator, and I've got a high school girl in the Crusades on Indiegogo right now. If you like good, clean fun, where heroes are heroes, villains are villains, and this will relate to the video, believe me, check this out, support the channel today, get us over the 12,000 mark. It'd be a lot of fun if we can get there, and I appreciate you guys who back and support the projects as it is. That's what we're here to do, create new books, create a different way of culture away from the corporate entertainment. All right, Grant Morrison's a guy who is now away from the corporate entertainment. You like that transition? It seems like just yesterday that I was mocking Grant Morrison for coming out as non-binary. Yes, I'm so stunning and brave. Clap for me, DC Comics. And, well, it just didn't seem to work. Now, Grant Morrison's now on Substack with a bunch of other creators, and we're going to look at something very interesting. He kind of alluded to something which looks like he might have gotten the axe from DC Comics, at least their superhero lines. And then he laments kind of the direction that DC Comics is going with its superheroes, turning them into just pure disasters rather than paying attention to what their sort of basic premise was, which is, good morals, upstanding citizens, truth, justice, and, dare I say it, the American way. Now, unlike this website, I don't believe Grant Morrison won the internet with this. It seems like a kind of whining cope fest. I see this a lot with these dark, edgy authors like Grant Morrison and Alan Moore. As they get into their later years, they always seem to lament the choices that they made with the characters. Alan Moore, I said Grant Moore, that's pretty funny, made Watchmen, Swamp Thing, all these dark superhero things where he really just torched the characters and really turned the industry into this ugly, nihilistic sort of thing where heroes can't be heroes anymore. They all have to be kind of anti-heroes at this point. And he really tried to repent for that. When he made his book Tom Strong and Top 10, he really was trying to push, saying, hey, I should have let heroes be heroes. I made a mistake with this. The whole industry should not have followed my lead here. And this is something that I think Grant Morrison kind of feels similarly to. So as much as he goes off on stuff, and this might be a little bit longer of a video, Grant Morrison's got a lot of points I really want to cover because he's actually right in what he's saying here, which I was very surprised about. And he sort of had the same takes as Alan Moore with a lot of his stuff. And it's really interesting to see that that's now getting shunned by the mainstream industry. So Grant Morrison has a Substack, which of course he requested everybody say not reproduce excerpts of. Whoops. I'm actually not on the newsletter, so I never agreed to anything like that. But I'm glad this is out here to be able to look at and analyze right now. What I really saw that was interesting, promise from before, start backstage realities of Cape Fic Biz. This is interesting. Now check this out. By the end of 2019, it was pretty much over between me and DC superhero comics. It's a really interesting statement that didn't really get highlighted in this article. But was there a break with Grant Morrison in 2019? If you notice, that's when DC really began its shift towards even more woke, towards where Tom King was taking things, to where Bendis was taking things. And this is exactly what they did. They kind of removed their old writers who paved the way for this stuff and tried to push this new future state forward where everybody's black, queer, gay, whatever, right? And so that's very interesting that was an impasse for Grant Morrison's career right there. And I wonder if there was something behind the scenes that went on, which is why he came out with that weird non-binary statement as it was in 2020. Very interesting. The explosive opening served to conceal a whimper worthy of Elliot. There was no falling out, no fireworks. I'd been cheated and ripped off over the years as much as any freelancer, but I saw it as my own responsibility and an occupational hazard of dealing with the rapacious, ungrateful pirates who guide the destiny of pop culture. Wow! That is a lot to unpack right there. So Grant Morrison was ushered out the door with no fireworks, as he said. He's a guy who kept it to himself. He wasn't going to play victim like a lot of these guys in the current comic book industry. But they treated him poorly. He calls them pirates. This is very interesting. A lot of people tried to rip off Grant Morrison over the years and just made things worse and worse and worse. And you see what happens when these talentless hacks, these SJWs, come in here and just destroy everything that came before them. It's just time and time again I see this, and it looks like Grant Morrison realizes that the industry really is an ugly place, and he was a willing part of it for a long time. Truth was, I'd already decided to call it a day 8 years earlier, but it can take a while to decelerate. So this is a little bit of cope. We're saying, yeah, 8 years earlier, I really didn't want to do this anymore because it's crap. But it was them ushering out the door, and this is why I'm going to make this video right now. I mean, Grant Morrison was really let go here. This is what he's talking about. This is very interesting. When 2019 came around, 40 years after my first paycheck, I felt I'd watched generations rise and fall, seen superstars blossom into novae and then fade as brown dwarfs. Many such cases. I lived through too many crises, falls, and rises, watched DC differentiate back to its roots and separate editorial fiefdoms, which multiple auteurs, and myself included, building personal narrative islands that slowly took the place of continuity. Yes, this was a big problem with what he did. Until it felt like one of those dreams where you find yourself back in school, but you're 36, or in my case, 59. I had no one but myself to blame. It's very interesting, and it harkens back to Alan Moore. Yes, that's exactly what happened. As these guys pushed their dark narratives and, deconstructed each character really felt like it wasn't a part of the DC universe anymore. Same thing with Marvel. And they just went off the rails. People applauded it as it happened because, oh, this is new and different. It really wasn't. It was just dark and edgy. Edgy boy comics. And when you just go down that path and keep going down that path, it just destroys that ongoing narrative, that beautiful continuity that existed for such a long time. And now it's gone. I mean, there's not even they don't even pretend anymore. It's ridiculous. So very interesting as he goes through this stuff. There's a lot of different posts here that are getting taken on the internet. But this is really interesting to me because I'm a big Supergirl fan, as you guys might know. And I just like the idea of the character. I think they really have botched her over time, and I think they really hasn't been a great writer other than Peter David, who kind of did a weird thing with it, who's taking care of that character. I've always wanted to really do something with this character, and that's why I kind of created my own Meta Girl, who's a much better version than the Supergirl that you see today. But check out what DC Comics was doing, which Grant Morrison took exception to. Concurrent plans existed to push Supergirl into an increasingly fascistic direction. What? And this is exactly what they do with Superman and Supergirl. They try to push them. They're like, oh, they have ultimate power, so they're going to have to be corrupt because they have to. Oh, everybody's always corrupt. And this is the problem with modern writers at DC in a nutshell right here. None of them actually believe in heroes. None of them actually believe in good. None of them actually believe in Christianity. And this is the whole problem you face all the way down the line. You can't tell good stories from that perspective. You just tell crap where the heroes are turned into mush. And Grant Morrison was willingly complacent with this for a long time. As I said, he seems to lament it now, and I'm loving this. I'm loving reading this. It made scant sense to me. Of course, it never makes any sense. Why? I say why is it so hard to simply serve the concept and write the adventures of a smart, creative, and kind-hearted teenage girl with superpowers? What purpose, or earthly or unearthly, is served by making this character into an embittered space tyrant? I just laid it out. Their purpose is to destroy heroes. Their purpose is to just show that the white blonde girl can't possibly be good, or the strong white man like Superman can't possibly be good. That's all that's important to the people that have come behind Grant Morrison, which are influenced by his darker works, which he sort of subverted the industry with to begin with. And he's wondering why it ended up in this state. He did say, I only have myself to blame. So it's looking like in his older years, he's starting to get it. But this is what the industry is now, and this is exactly what he paved the way for. When I brought The Maid of Might into Final Crisis series, my take was very much inspired by Dylan Horrock's Jessica Abel story from 2002's Bizarro Comics anthology, but whatever. Derp derp. In my opinion, quite simply the greatest Supergirl comic ever. Yeah, he's trying to be a hipster here. If any version of Supergirl should serve as a template for the character moving forward, it's this one. Gosh. Or it should just be my Meta Girl. I think it's way better. But yes, it's a great point here that they all have been pushing this direction in recent years with Superman and Supergirl. And it's a disaster of what they've done. He goes further And I'm sorry if I go a little long, but I really think this is interesting stuff. I've always considered my work in comics a kind of live performance where feedback was nearly instantaneous, but the cheers of the crowd were being replaced by a clearing of throats, shuffling of feet, and although punctured by the odd half-hearted yay, it was clear that Wednesday Warrior readers of DC superhero titles were less and less interested in what I had to sell. Well, yeah, I mean, as you trying to push every character into the bizarre, into the nihilistic, which led to this stuff, which snowballed into this stuff, people got burnt out on it. People just want to read some good heroes at the end of the day. And that's why independent comics are now surging, because we are actually telling stories where heroes are heroes like you're lamenting about. Meanwhile, younger creators who grew up absorbing the lessons of my work were rendering me obsolete or refining my approach into an easily reproducible house style. Thus, the decline of DC Comics. It all starts right here. Having prepared myself for a sudden glide into verse 3 of Momus' hilarious, ultra-bleak, and medicated song, whatever, he just... Who talks like this? This is the problem, Grant Morrison. You got this whole, like, pretentious way of speaking, which doesn't relate to a modern, just a pulp audience who's reading about a dude with superpowers who beats people up. I mean, come on. Seemed like the right time to move on from regular superhero comics, leave the space on the stage for younger bands, and focus instead on work that provided fresh challenges. I'll translate that for you. DC doesn't want me to write any books anymore. All right. That's it. So there's a bunch here, and it goes deeper than this, of course, as I mentioned. But the truth is that Grant Morrison's dark, edgy nihilism paved the way for the destruction of DC Comics. He laments it himself. He's actually critical of it at this point, and he realizes that even that's not enough. It's not woke enough for the current generation of editors. They don't want him. He's not far enough for what he's been replaced by. DC Comics has been destroyed, and so has Grant Morrison's career. This is huge news, and I can't believe it's not being reported anywhere. Whew! Let me know what you think about this. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.